Um, just give everybody just a second to join. I've got to say, I'm delighted to be here with Kat Swetel. Kat's an old friend. We've been having lots of interesting discussions around AI, the impact of AI, and in terms of development, languages, and experiences. But today's session is all about resilience in exhausting times. Now, I don't really need to do an introduction to Kat Swetel because, hey, it's Kat Swetel, a huge fan of, huge, no, I shouldn't say fan of mapping, a huge supporter of mapping, has been heavily involved in the mapping community. I'm delighted to say that Kat's also going to join us at the fireside chat at the end of the day as well. But that's enough of me talking. Because I'm just very dull. So Kat, it's absolutely great to see you. Over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Okay, you see my slides? I assume so.
Yes, I can see your slides. Also, by the way, if anybody's got any questions, please put them in the Q&A or fire things in chat, and I'll try and get them all together. So at the end of the session. So yes, all looks perfect. You sound perfect. I'll go quiet.
Cool. Okay, so I'm Kat Swetel. This is my talk, Resilience in Exhausting Times, which I believe we are currently experiencing. And the subtitle for this talk is, this is the one where Kat convinces you that you are doing too much. So we'll see how that goes. If you haven't been to one of my talks before, it will get weird, and that's fine. And you should feel free to react in the chat, and Simon will be monitoring the chat. So yes, it's meant to be interactive. The questions are not rhetorical, so please chime in. Who is Kat? I'm a senior director of engineering at a company called Nubank. We're a very large digital bank headquartered in São Paulo, Brazil. I have a weird background. My bachelor's degree is in global management with a concentration in finance, so nothing to do with software engineering. And my master's is in science and technology policy. So again, not a lot to do with software engineering, but I do think that's helpful context for the rest of my talk. I am also a mom and a wife and all of those things that are also exhausting sometimes. So there we go. And I'm going to do a brief visual description right now. If you don't know, a visual description is something for the benefit of the low vision and blind audience members. But there is a benefit for people who are multitasking, which you should not be doing. You should be focused on this right now. So close the other windows. But yes, I'm a white lady. I have brown hair. I have like a pinkish purple top on, and I have a bunch of whiteboards behind me. Okay. All right. Now, to get into the meat of this, first, I would like to ask a question, which is, why are you here? Like here at Map Camp? Please go ahead, share with your fellow attendees why you're here. I bet a lot of you are here because you want to do something great. You're here at Map Camp. You want to, okay, yeah, I want to learn Wardley mapping, or I want to expand my Wardley mapping practice because I want to do something great. I want to make a difference, or I want to be successful, any of those things. Some of you, I see you out there, you are here to avoid doing something terrible, right? You're thinking, oh my goodness, I really want to learn Wardley mapping, or I want to get better at Wardley mapping because I don't want to make those stupid mistakes that I have heard about in other talks. Yeah, so I think a lot of people, right, fall into these two categories. We believe that Wardley mapping will help us do the right thing, not do the wrong thing. And I'm here to just suggest gently that Wardley mapping will just help you. And maybe you can strike that do part, okay? Hear me out. I know that's a little wonky. Um, Another thing about me that is a really important part of my identity is that I am a doer. I love being productive. I love doing things like when I'm stressed out, I don't go watch a movie. I cook a big meal and I do a bunch of chores, and I love doing things. It is a core piece of my identity. And because of that, I believe I am struggling in these exhausting times. And I think my pitch to you is that this might not be the season of humanity for a strong focus on just do, do, do. So I present to you this option, and you could tell it is important for you to pay attention because the slide is bright yellow, like it's reflecting off of my face. So that's how you can tell. It's very important to pay attention to this one. The option that I humbly offer you is to try doing nothing. Just do nothing. Instead, just try noticing, not with the intent to do anything, but just try noticing what's going on with you, what's going on around you. And I wonder if you might feel freer to notice more things if you weren't putting the pressure on yourself to act. Um, I know that for me personally, that disposition towards action occasionally causes me to filter what I'm noticing because I only want to notice the things that would help me to take action or would help present a valid action to take. So I invite you to think about what you might notice if you are not noticing in service of taking action, but if noticing itself was the important thing. Um, yes. And then I did say, notice what's going on with you, notice what's going on around you. And I very intentionally put it in that order. I believe that we should notice ourselves first and what's going on for us, and then notice outside of ourselves. And right now you're like, oh, very philosophical. Who is this lady? Shut up, blah, blah, blah. No, okay. I'm going to back this up. I'm going to take it all the way back to Sun Tzu. We're going old school right now. So lots of you, you're in the Wardley mapping community, you know this quote, right? If you know yourself and you know your enemy, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. You're going to clean up. You're going to do so good. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you'll also suffer a defeat. Okay. So you're 50-50. Okay. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you will succumb in every battle. That seems bad. You're just going to lose 100% of the time. So this, like if we put this in a table, this is what it is, right? If your enemy is known and you know yourself, then you don't need to fear anything. You're going to get tired of winning, right? If you don't know your enemy, but you know yourself, okay, it's going to be a wash. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. If you don't know yourself or your enemy, you're just going to lose every time. What option is missing there? There is one configuration in this table that is missing, right? Yeah. What is it? There isn't, Sun Tzu doesn't even present an option for knowing your enemy, but not knowing yourself. Like, I just imagine him being like, oh my gosh, who would be dumb enough to do that? Like, that's not a thing. Um, so I challenge you to think of the times in your own life, because I know I certainly do this all the time. I I fixate on knowing the enemy or knowing what is outside of me or the potential enemies, the competitive landscape, all of these things. And sometimes I do that at the detriment of knowing myself and really continuously knowing myself, my own position, and what's going on with me. So, like, that's table stakes, okay? Right? It's not even an option in this table in order to know your enemy without knowing yourself. Like, I don't know that that is even possible for you to know your enemy and not know yourself. So that's the importance. You want to start with noticing in yourself. Okay. But actually, I say that and you're like, okay, yeah, I'll just check in with myself. Noticing is easy. It's actually not. It's actually pretty difficult in times like these. Noticing is not very easy. So let me explain that a little bit. First, what are times like these? Why is noticing hard in times like these? Well, things are moving very quickly, right? We have this accelerating pace of change. For example, Simon shared that we were in the whatever practice session, we're chatting about AI um, so quickly, changing so quickly, right? Like, do you remember um, like Facebook groups a couple years ago that were about image generation prompts, and it would be like a person with 3 ears and like 12 fingers or something like that. And now we have videos that are generated that they look like real humans, right? They don't have like three nostrils or something like that and some weird mix of teeth. No, they look like real humans. Things are moving very quickly. And we are also more connected, we, humanity, more connected than ever in many different ways. Like, we are physically more connected. You can take a flight anywhere. We are also, of course, digitally more connected. All of us are here connecting digitally, and we are on social networks, and those are huge pieces of our life. Like, if you, I'm sure many of you are aware that Twitter got thrown out of, or X, I guess, got thrown out of Brazil. And that was a huge, losing a social media site was a huge piece of news on the global stage, right? So we are more connected than ever. What does that mean? It means, because we're all connected, that the system in which we exist, the global society in which we exist, is constantly acting on itself. Because we are all connected, that system is acting on itself, and very quickly, because we are all instantly connected through the magic of the internet. And we also have these instabilities which are dragging on. Our system is not acting on itself and pushing the system back towards equilibrium. We have these areas of instability that are dragging on and causing perturbations through the entire system. So we are still feeling the effects of COVID-19. We have instability in Ukraine and Russia. We have instability in the Middle East. We have these places of instability, and the system is not acting on itself to restore equilibrium. It is perpetuating the instability. So times like these are really weird. Long story short, things are moving very quickly, and the system in which we exist, in which we are all players, is acting on itself because we are so connected. So that's what I mean when I say times like these. And why is noticing hard? Because we quickly become acclimated in a way to the changing conditions, right? Like, your expectations around AI generated images and movies have changed significantly in the past couple years. And that, I bet, I don't know how much you've sat there and consciously thought about it. Like, wow, my suspicion of deep fakes has really increased over the past few years. And I would guess that 5 years ago, that wasn't even something that was on your radar. Um, so it that that pace, then we are all becoming acclimated all the time. It is our natural tendency. We have to become acclimated in order to exist. So we quickly become acclimated to the changing conditions and we lose our ability to notice that things are changing at that rapid rate. And we exist in the system, right? So we are part of the systems that are changing. We are not observers who can stand back and be like, global society is changing. It is changing and we are changing because we are pieces of that system. So it's like the fish and water thing, right? Like, the one fish says to the other fish, oh, how's the water today, Bob? And the other fish says, what the hell is water, right? Like that that piece of change is the water in which we are swimming. So it's very hard for us to observe those things because we are in that system. I hope that makes sense. Why is noticing important right now? Because if that pace of change is going so quickly, we still have people that have the point of reference and the value system that we have now moved on, right? Uh, so in a way, the system in which we exist is gaslighting all of us, right? And there are many, many examples of this. The one, because Roger Martin will be speaking at the fireside chat later, I'll point out some of the ones that he points to in his book. But productivity has skyrockets going up and up and up and up and up and up and up, right? So in the US, I think we started collecting data on the productivity of workers in 1948, and it's just gone up, 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 up. But then, in the 70s, wages, inflation adjusted wages just kind of leveled off. In fact, they dipped a little bit and they go up a little bit, but they pretty much just leveled off. So where is where is all of that productivity going, right? Where is the reward of that productivity going? But then you get told things like, well, if you drank less Starbucks coffee or didn't eat avocado toast, you would own a home. I don't know, because that excess, right, is going somewhere, and it's not going to people who are collecting wages, especially hourly wages. And you know, lots of people, if you've seen one of my talks before, you know that I love Mary Parker Follett, right? A famous, not as famous as she should be, but still famous management thinker and labor organizer. And I think that she would be horrified to learn that in the US, which is where I'm from, we have seen the power of unions decline drastically. And so the power is close to nothing now. We have seen reports of like unacceptable working conditions skyrocket, go way, way up. But at the same time, we have close to zero strikes. So conditions are getting worse. There's no one to advocate for you. And for some reason, people are not advocating for themselves. So we have some people who have they're anchored in this idea that yes, as you go on, you accumulate wealth, wages go up, you accumulate wealth, and you can buy assets like a home or something like that. So that's the standard that they will be holding you to in their brain, right? And when that doesn't happen, your brain is like, okay, let me come up with a story to make sense of why that isn't happening. And if I'm a millennial, right? Like that can make you feel not great when every headline is like, hey, why are millennials killing everything? So why noticing now? I want you to be grounded in your own reality, okay? Not the reality that has been dictated to you by others. So I know this is a spicy take, but I do have this photo of Jordan Peterson on here, and he's famous for saying that you need to clean your room, and this is the room behind him, right? And he says, well, going through a difficult time. I was addicted to drugs. My wife was having this serious illness. And all of those things are true for him, right? And that's why individually it probably makes sense for him to have a messy room. And I want you to be grounded in your own reality, not in the things that are said to you by a guru or by a pundit or by anything else. I want you to be grounded in your own reality and not be gaslit by your surroundings. And I want you to enjoy that avocado toast guilt free. Okay. So that's why I'm noticing now. Um, how are you going to do this? I have a proposal for you that I believe will fit with your daily life. So my proposal to you is that you send headlines, memes, social media posts, etc., to your future self. Okay? So you take those things, you notice those things, and then you send them to your future self to be like, hey, remember, this is where we were at. This is important context for whatever that is. Um, but literally how, like I say that, but how does that work? How do you send the things to your future self? So whether you're mapping or not mapping, you can take screenshots and save them in your photos. I do this a lot. So when there's something that I'm like, oh, this resonates with me, or I'm having a really strong negative reaction to this, whatever, take a screenshot of that, put it in your photos. Your photos app will do its thing, right? And create these little memories for you. Remember when you thought these memes were relevant? So we already have things that do that, and they are extracting value from you. So you might as well extract value from them, right? But the other way that I offer to you that I have taken to doing is annotate your maps with those memes and headlines and social media posts. Okay, that is my offer to you. Um, I say screenshots really intentionally because, like what you may have heard, things disappear on the internet. So I do not suggest URLs. Okay, no links. They tend to disappear. So take a screenshot, copy and paste the headline into a note on your map, um, whatever the case may be, but don't depend on links. So what is the minimally effective noticing? What is it? Because I'm trying to convince you to do less. So what is the least you can do to get the benefit of this? Just do you. Keep doom scrolling, keep researching from the toilet. I'm not here to pass judgment on you, and you shouldn't pass judgment on yourself. But when you get ready to send that meme or that video to your best friend from Map Camp, uh, add yourself as a recipient. Okay, so that is the very minimum. Usually I say, oh, you should just get started mapping. You should just get started mapping. If you're too exhausted to do a map, I still want you to notice, even if your noticings are not embedded in a map. Here's on the screen right now, there's the thing that I sent to myself, which is about the different budget allocations between President Trump and President Biden. And I took a screenshot of this when I was doing some mapping of what the different budget priorities could mean for the US economy and for industries in the US. And I thought this was interesting because it says, from this point of view, they are basically the same when you compare military spending and non-military spending. And I have my little question in there. Does that mean that they are the same? That the differences are not, it doesn't really matter who you vote into office? Or does it mean that the small differences are really super meaningful? So that was my question to myself when I put this screenshot on a map of different possibilities from the budget priorities. And I did want you to know that I don't always do like really, philosophical things or like I had this screenshot, which is Heidi Montag eating raw meat out of a Ziploc baggie. And I have no idea. There was no note with it. Just in the folder with everything else. So yeah, I am also noticing really dumb things, I guess, too. So when it comes to maps, how do you engage in this practice of noticing and annotating them with things that are relevant in the news, that are relevant culturally at the time. Um, so I think there are different approaches, and these are some that I have tried, but I would guess that you all have other approaches, and I would actually love to hear about them if you want to share them later. But I suggest that you can, if you have a folder structure in which you keep your maps, I would suggest that you just add some things in the same folder. So these maps are on this topic, and here are some things that I found relevant along with those maps. You could put them on the maps themselves, depending on like what kind of how you're mapping. Like I'm mapping on a whiteboard. I don't know if I'm going to be like printing off a meme and putting it on there. I'm not sure. But you could always literally add them on, like take a screenshot of your map and then add things on. Or, once you have the screenshot in your photos, you could insert a link to your own photos, or, literally just paste it on there, depending on where you're doing your mapping. And sometimes I end up just putting it on the map, like the budget priorities. That's kind of something that is relevant to the whole map. So it's just kind of there with the map. And sometimes I put things on specific nodes or connections, especially if I notice that it is a node that keeps appearing on many maps. Then I start that, even just noticing that that node appears on many maps sensitizes me as I'm scrolling through the news or I'm scrolling through memes like, oh, you know what, this is relevant to that node that I keep seeing, so I'm going to pop that in there. Um, I right now am going to retract some advice that I gave you earlier. Dun, dun, dun. So at a previous map camp years ago, I said, make a map, throw it in the trash. It'll take the pressure off of you. You should just make a map, throw it away. I don't actually think that it is the season for that right now. I think that you should save your maps, even if they are not very good, they are not very detailed, they don't have a lot of things added, because it's what you noticed at the time. And I think that is really important to sensitizing you to that pace of change and all of those things. So I am changing my mind. I think right now, today, the year of our Lord, 2024, I think you should not throw away your maps. I think you should just save them and um, take note of them later. And yes, I'm allowed to change my mind. And you, my friends, are also allowed to change your mind. You don't have to dig in your heels. Just because you said something earlier, you're allowed to change your mind. It would be really weird if the pace of change in the world was so rapid, but we were never allowed to change our minds. So I hope that you feel like it's okay to change your mind. And I I'm hoping that if you remove the pressure from yourself to act and you just say, I'm making this map for the purpose of noticing, then you'll feel as free as you did when you were thinking of that map as being disposable. And I think we have experienced something like this before. This is why I'm saying it. So I am 36 years old. So there was a point where I would be out with my friends and we had like the disposable Kodak camera, right? And you drop it off at the store, like the whole thing, and get it developed. My sister, slightly younger than me, she had a Nikon Coolpix. It wasn't this exact camera, it was older than this, but this is the oldest one I could find a photo of, okay? Um, and I would like, okay, everybody, pose really nice, like do this. I'm going to take a photo of you with my disposable camera because, it was $8 or whatever, and it's going to cost this much to develop the film if I want to see the photos. My sister she would fill up her whole memory card like in a day, all of these selfies. It was a completely different dynamic. And that's what I'm hoping will happen with you and maps. So I'm hoping that you can treat your maps like blurry photos of precious moments. And as evidence of that, here are 3 blurry photos that I have never deleted. And I love them so much. and they're terrible photos. You get nothing from them. They are awful, but I keep them because it's so cheap to keep photos now, right? Like it's so cheap. I don't have to go through and delete them. I realize they suck. I don't care. I'm keeping them because I can, because it's so cheap. And guess what? Maps are a lot cheaper to keep than photos, right? Especially if you're creating them in a text format. There's tons of awesome tools for that out there, and they're so cheap. So I just want you to keep them. Then now you have these maps, they're annotated with cultural occurrences and all of these noticings from the time around you. I want you to browse your maps. When you go back in time, I want you to browse your maps by date, not by topic. Okay? By date, not by topic, when you go back and look at the maps. Why browse by date? Because I want you to notice things across maps, right? What are the common commodity nodes that are changing over time, or any of those things? I want you to browse them by date rather than by topic, so that you notice how the world is changing, not how a specific topic is evolving. Um, some bonus tips: add follow-ups when you browse through your noticings. Like sometimes I would notice something and say, oh, I think this is going to happen. Well, then I go back and say like the date, you know, September 18th, 2024. That did not happen. This happened. I was preparing for this talk and went back through, and there was a note from my friend that I kept that said, Aaron Rodgers, who's a quarterback in American football, will retire at Green Bay Packer. And that's not happening. So like I go back and write things there. You have the benefit of hindsight, right? So in retrospect, what looks weird about this map? What were the things that you didn't notice at the time? What do you wish that you had known or noticed at the time? Go ahead and make a note of that. So, okay. All right. Uh, Here are the things that I am proposing to you so that you can grow your situational awareness, both of yourself, of your situation. First, just notice, take the pressure off of yourself to act and just notice as you map, okay? Keep all of those noticing. So as you notice things when you're mapping, uh, do the work of embedding those noticings in your mapping, and then later revisit those noticings by time. And you know what? It makes sense to be exhausted right now. We have this 24-hour news cycle. We have norms that are shifting rapidly. We exist in a system that is acting on itself more and more and more quickly. Our system is producing tools that allow it to act on itself. And this leads to us being in the state of constantly re-examining our past. We're going to view our past through whatever is valid right now. So we have to resituate our past, and then we have to reconsider our future, right? There have been plenty in my field in software engineering, there's been plenty of moments like this that I have even seen, right? Okay, I am a sysadmin. Okay, well now we have the cloud, we have all of these things. What am I now? What have I been doing with my life, and where am I going? Okay, well, maybe I make the choice to be a DevOps engineer, and I reconsider my future in that way, and I reconsider my past in that way. And that in and of itself is exhausting. It is exhausting to constantly be re-examining your past, resituating your past, and also reformulating your future. That is exhausting in and of itself. It is causing you to constantly resituate your entire life. And then add on to that we feel this constant pressure to act, right? We got to do something right now. Let's do it, do something. But at the same time, acting feels unsafe because things are moving so quickly. So again, my suggestion to you is that you consider the option of doing nothing. And it won't always be a valid option, but I invite you to recognize it as an option. Do nothing and try just noticing. And even as you are doing things, set your intention to notice rather than to do. And I wonder how that might actually change the things that you do and how you show up when you are doing things. So with that, that's the end of my talk, and I hope that I have earned the honor of your time because I realize that you've now spent quite a bit of time with me, and your time is precious, especially in this world where everything's speeding up all the time. And I am super, super grateful for that. So thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that. You can hear me, yes? Just double
Yes.
checking I've got it right. Okay, super. So do nothing, try noticing. I mean, that screams off observe. And the problem with the whole OODA thing is everybody wants to jump to the act bit. You see it all the time. Oh, we won't do
The
the
fun
observe, we
part.
just act. Because we understand
Yeah.
act, do something, you know? I mean,
Hmm.
it's a bit like generals saying, I don't know, fire the artillery somewhere, hit something, and without observing the environment. It's crazy. Why do we do that? Have you got any idea why we've got this fixation with action?
I have many ideas. I don't know how valid they are, right? I mean, for me personally, it feels really good to act, right?
Hmm.
Like when things feel out of control, me physically changing my surroundings feels amazing. Like I love cooking, and why does that feel so good? Because in a very short amount of time, when everything else is out of control, I have produced something that is useful to my family, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It feels very, very good to exert some amount of control. We're also in a system, right, that prizes action and output. And so I'm sure there's the pressure of that. Like, I don't know how many of us in our jobs are rewarded for being seen thinking deeply or, right,
Or
like we
writing
like to
papers.
say. Yeah.
Rather than thinking about the
Yes.
subject, how many papers do I write? It's a bit like, you say about cooking. I love cooking as well, but I do observe what ingredients I've got, or maybe what the time of day is before I start acting.
Hmm.
I look before I leap. But it does seem to be we've got this fascination with leaping, and the reason why I say research papers is people are rewarded on how many research papers do
Yes.
you publish, not how
Hmm.
much thought has gone into it. So there's another thing you said. So I've got a secret, and my secret is every year I have a folder for the year, and I put all my maps in that folder. So I've kept them all the way back to about 2006 when I started. About 2019, 2020, I started putting the date in the actual title itself. So I keep, and the reason why I've done that for so long is because what I will often do is I will take maps and I will do like pre-mortem challenge with a map, and then we'll do something, and afterwards post-mortem learning. And it's through looking at a map before and after we've done something, the action, and that's how I learned those patterns. And that's where all those climatic patterns, the doctrine, and everything else came from. So I've got to say, fantastic, you know, um, note. Keep your maps and notice the environment, notice how it changes. The other thing, I love the idea of putting photos and other bits and pieces. I these days I work with a tool called Glamorous Toolkit, and so I'm doing all sorts of mixing of all sorts of different media. Because it's a bit like Jupyter Note, but with extra bits. Okay, so I've got loads of questions to ask you, but I've got limited time, and we've got some questions here as well. So from Laura, we've got, what are your favorite tools for mapping that aren't whiteboards?
Oh, this is this is such a hard one because it depends on you, right? Personally, I like just the VS Code because I'm comfortable there, right? So there's the online Wardley mapping little plugin doodad that you can use there. And for me, that I'm very comfortable. I have all kinds of little tricks that I do, even so that I can present a map to people and like build it in. Um, but I have a lot of luck collaboratively mapping in Miro with folks. And obviously that has the great advantage of being able to like put images right in there. So that's super cool. And lately I have started in with MapKeep a bit. That's a snazzy thing. So I think like Ben Mosher is here and he's probably a great person to ask about like, okay, I have this need and I'm looking for the right tool to help me map. He can probably give you some guidance there. But I would say just tinker with them and also don't be afraid to try different tools depending on what the situation is, right? Like some things are good, I think, for personally mapping, but not that great for collaboratively mapping. So I think it depends on your situation. That's probably not an answer that's very helpful, but yeah.
Oh, it's a good answer, I think. I mean, and you also mentioned Ben Mosier, who happens to have the next question. How will you know when it is time to return to a posture of action? How do you make that decision of, I've done enough observing, I need to act?
Again, you're going to hate this answer. I think it depends on you. So I'm a person who's very biased towards action, right? So for me, there are very few scenarios where I'm like, boy, I acted too late. So for me personally, I am like, hey, is there any downside to me waiting 30 minutes? That's usually the time span because that's how biased I am towards action, that even 30 minutes sometimes feels like this is too long. I can't wait 30 minutes. So I start with that. Would it be okay for me to wait 30 minutes to do this? Is it okay for me to wait a day to do this? Is it okay for me? Um, yeah. But I think it's also important for like for me personally, I have such a bias towards action that then I get doing too many things and life is very overwhelming and I don't have the ability to absorb more perturbations in my surroundings. So then I end up doing less, whether I like it or not, right? Because I just am inundated with things. So I think it depends. If you're a person who finds yourself getting in the analysis paralysis, then maybe you say, well, is there any advantage to starting 30 minutes earlier, a day earlier, a week earlier? But if you're someone like me who's very biased towards action, I think many of us are, then maybe say, is there any disadvantage to waiting 30 minutes for this? And frequently the answer is no.
Cool. Thank you. Right, next question. Oh, this is from Tudor. So I work with Tudor and we use Glamorous Toolkit. And so we create maps, add images, live coding, all within the same context, the same environment, without jumping to other tools. But because context switching is so expensive, but nonetheless, question. So I'm just giving you a bit of background there. His question is, mapping can be seen as the act of translating observations into the mapping language. But there are other ways to translate thoughts into language, like programming or doodling. Do you ever
Mhm.
find it interesting to see the map history intertwined with other thought transcriptions?
Yes, definitely. And I have on the back of this whiteboard, I won't turn it around, right? But I have just a drawing. It's not a map, it's just a drawing. But I have been doing that at the same time as working on another map. And then because this is like my level of nerdiness and like, I don't know, it's not good. I don't recommend anyone does this. But then I have a spreadsheet that like is a kind of clutching mechanism between those things where I'm tracking the changes in the map and the changes in the drawing, and then
Mhm.
also the things I am doing in my day-to-day life, and they're in one spreadsheet together. I don't recommend anyone be that level of extra, but that is my life.
Well, we've got, I don't know if we've got time because we're really at the very edge, but we've got another question from Ben Parry. Does noticing more mean focusing less?
I have not experienced it that way, but perhaps you will. I think especially like the way that I talked about, I do a map and that map sets me up to notice certain things about my life, or I do several maps and that map sensitizes me to notice certain things about my life. So I think no, it's not causing me not to focus. It is just changing the sensitivity that I have to the world around me. All of those things are there. I am passively or actively taking them in. And my suggestion is that you just more actively take in those things rather than passively.
And because we're right on time now and everything else, one final question. I'll give you 5 seconds to answer because you mentioned terrible things. How do we stop people from using Wardley maps to do terrible things?
You don't.
You don't. Oh, damn. Right. On that note, I'm going to say fantastic talk. Absolute pleasure. Delight as usual. Thank you so much. And see you at the fireside chat.
Thanks, Simon. See you later. Bye.
Pleasure.